With Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition on the horizon, there are so many features we'd like to see within the game. From gameplay updates to new music and especially the new story content, the possibilities seem endless for a re-release like this on the Nintendo Switch. With that said, it's about time we laid out what we'd like to see from Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. Let's dive right in, and welcome to Episode 3 of Beyond the Conduit. Alright, well, I think to get started, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The text size. It has to improve. It has to get bigger. I have perfect vision. The doctors tell me they've never seen such great vision, and I barely can see it.
That text size is minuscule, and it was even worse on the gamepad with such a low-res screen. We won't have to worry about that anymore. We're just struggling to read a game this dense with numbers and text in its menus. Yeah, it has to be increased significantly.
And I think, that's one of the things I think that'll be a key focus for Monolith, because it's super easy. It's just a quick improvement. But yeah, I honestly expect them to not double it, but get pretty close to that, because it looks really nice. I really like the font they use for it, but it is just, man, it's tiny.
Yeah, and a lot of the text boxes are small, so it's a small text box with even smaller font within it. A similar problem was in the older Monster Hunter games as well. Just, come on, I need to read this if you're gonna have me juggle these RPG elements.
No, absolutely, and it gets really challenging, especially when there's a lot going on screen. If you're flying around your Skell or you're in a fight and there's dialogue, it's borderline impossible. So I am hoping that they get it addressed. I think it's something really quick and easy for that. But I will say another area, and I think this one we kind of already have confirmation, but the audio balancing, right? Because in the original game, now granted, I love Hiroyuki Sawano. I love the X soundtrack, but that soundtrack overtakes a lot of the voice acting sometimes, and I've seen some people make jokes that they're like, I don't even know how the voice acting was in the game because I couldn't hear it. I just heard uncontrollable. So but I will say, I do think that it sounds a lot better, at least from that first trailer. That is a trailer, but maybe?
Surely. Because, I'd say this has overall gotten better with Monolith's games. But, at bare minimum, just include sliders. Let me mix the audio myself if I'm not satisfied with it.
Yeah, because sometimes, companies will set something and it might be a little too loud in one area or another. But I don't know. I mean, I think we'll see. I agree with you. I think 2 and 3 were both pretty good with balancing on the audio for music and voice acting and effects. But yeah, I mean, if it sounds like the trailer, I'm pretty satisfied, I have to say, because it sounded really nice. I could still hear the music, but the voice acting and the characters took the strong front, and I think that's important.
Yeah, with a game like this, you're gonna want to hear the voice acting. So I think in general, like we said, they have gotten better about that, but I think it's integral to include just sliders because everyone's headset sounds different, everyone's speakers are a little different. So I think just giving the player the freedom to choose how they wish their audio to be balanced is really what they should go for.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
So, beyond our qualms with the text and audio balancing of the original game. The next thing that Xenoblade X Definitive Edition has to deliver upon is the quality of life.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's an area that they can easily, once again, improve. But we saw it with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. You know, there was a lot of really nice quality of life features that made that game that had a lot of annoying parts to it better. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, oh, everything was fixed, it was a perfect game, because I certainly don't believe that. But they had fixed a ton of the issues I had with it and made it a lot better. And I think, like, again, right off the bat, like, give us multiple save slots. I think that's super easy to do. And, you know, we saw it with Xenoblade 3 and even 2. It's like, just give me a couple places to save on so I don't have to ride my one save. And if, you know, I transfer it over, it's done.
Yeah, and like, gosh, like, if you wanted to replay the game, there's just no easy way to do it with one save slot. You have to go through the trouble of making another account and then starting fresh that way. Just please give us some more save slots. Especially since X is rife with, like, branching quest lines.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm like sitting here, I don't know why I just said that Xenoblade 2 has multiple save slots, because it doesn't. And that's my biggest problem with the game, is because I've 100%ed it like 4 times and I've had to restart all over every single time. And it's horrible. So I really would love not to do that. I think Xenoblade 3, what do we get? Like 3 manual slots and then the autosave?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
That's great.
And with 2, they just so bad want to lock you in onto that gacha. No safe scumming allowed.
Yeah, no, and it's like, oh man, I really do hope that they let us save on a couple manual slots, just because, again, it's like, you know, if I finish the game and I'm like, oh man, I want to do a replay, but I don't want to lose everything or whatever, you know, I'd like to just start another game with a different character maybe, and I don't, you know, I think that's cool.
Definitely, and especially with, like, the class system, just having multiple save slots, so, like, if you want to start fresh and try a different class, like, at the start, because it's not easy to build all these things up, and if you want to experiment, I bet you sure don't want to make a new profile on your Switch just to see if you'd rather start out a different way.
Right, no, absolutely. And I think, like, on the topic of saving, let's talk about autosave, because the game notoriously does not have autosave.
Like, it's gonna be 2025 when Xenoblade X Definitive Edition launches. It needs an autosave. That's just industry standard at this point.
100%. And, you know, like, in a lot of games on the market, autosave is so common that, you know, you really almost don't even have to worry about manual saving. For me, manual saving is just a habit. Like, every time I'm playing, I've been playing recently Persona 3 Reload, trying to catch up on the year, and I've been dragging my feet through that. But, you know, everything I do, there's an autosave for it, and even though I still manually save, I see autosave on it all the time. That's industry standard at this point for RPGs, you know, and I think that's super important to have in a game like this, because, again, like, if you just fly around and you fly all over the world and just land on a continent and do a quest, like, you want that save. You don't want to be like, all right, I'm turning my Switch off or I'm closing the game, but then all of a sudden you've lost your progress. Like, that would be really sucky.
And that was a problem with, like, Xenoblade 2 before it got a couple patches, because that thing would crash. Like, I haven't suffered any crashes with the game outside of, like, the first few months, but that game also doesn't have an autosave, so if it crashed, you're just out of luck. You gotta redo everything you just did. And X is a huge game. I'd be devastated if that game crashed and I lost, presumably, just a huge amount of content that I already completed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think even more so from, like, a convenience factor. Like, maybe I'm crazy saying this, but I feel like the average gamer that is playing a game is not thinking about saving. It's usually done for them nowadays. It's not something that they have to think about. So I also just think it can lead to frustration for people, and I think it probably would take minimal effort to include it. And I think it would be one of the biggest quality of life changes that they could add.
Yeah, like, they even backported it into, like, Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition, and it has way less going on than X.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. I think also, moving on with just quality of life stuff, like, let's see some expert mode or some, other varying difficulty options.
Like, Xenoblade 2, like, it had a bunch of updates, but they added in, like, a very great, like, just custom difficulty thing to where you can really make things as easy or as difficult as you want. I'd say do that for X, especially with its deep class system and other stuff. I feel like people could really figure out some great strategies and push, like, different builds to the limit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that expert mode would be really cool. And in general, yeah, like the whole varying difficulty thing, you see this in some of the quests if you take them on when you're higher level, but you might just end up like, oh, one shot the boss. And it's like, dang, I would really like to, have some challenge if I waited to do this quest and just came back later and not get punished for it. But, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, these Xenoblade games are all so huge and content dense that if you save something for later, you'll just come back basically a god fighting some bunnets or something.
Yeah, some bunnets is absolutely correct. That's so funny because I remember like with 2, I'd go a New Game Plus run and just tear through the bosses, and it's like, okay, I finished the first 30 hours of the game in 5 hours. Lila and Bana and Giga Rosa are all done in 5 seconds.
You could probably even throw it on auto battle with no problem that way too.
No, absolutely. Well, and I guess for those listening that might not be familiar with expert mode, it essentially allows you to like bring down the level of your characters at any point in the game, and you basically just get to store that XP in like a big pool, which is really cool.
Yeah, like if Xenoblade X incorporated that, like it just has so much content that you could probably just spend hours just wandering off, just ignoring any of the main story content, and that could lead you to getting over-leveled, especially if you love the combat. So having expert mode would probably be very satisfactory to veteran players of the game.
Absolutely. And, Xenoblade 2 does have something like this at the end, like you can level down your party members and just store the XP. It's the same kind of idea. But I do think this would just be an easy way for, once again, Monolith to add kind of a pretty generic quality of life feature that players can really benefit from, because no one really wants to jump in to the game after beating it and be stuck like, okay, like let's just plow through everything really quickly. Like, no, let me level down and like master the combat system so I can beat the level 50 boss is like level 5 or 10.
And really, I don't see a reason for them to not add that. Because, hey, here's this for like the hardcore players who get a thrill off the challenge, but you could also just ignore it if you like over-leveling.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Another thing, they need to add a cutscene theater.
Yeah, no, I can't believe it. There's not one, to be honest with you.
Like, to think, 2 only came out a couple years after X, and it had it. So I think X needs it. It has some awesome scenes that I'd love to rewatch, like on my console in full quality, not having to use some like crusty old 720p YouTube videos with horrible artifacting. I just want to see these cutscenes how they were intended to be seen when I want to see them.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like Event Theater started with Xenoblade 2, and it's just one of those things, like you can literally watch every single cutscene, and you want to pause it, you can pause it, but I mean, you could even change in Xenoblade 2, you could change the weather, you could change all that kind of stuff, and even, Definitive Edition, because I think that's what's most important here. We have to look at what Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition brought to kind of determine what features we might be getting, and it did have Event Theater, and it even had the Heart to Hearts included in that as well, which I thought was interesting. So I think it's pretty no-brainer that we'll see something like this in X, but I mean, hey, I'm all for it because there's some fantastic cutscenes in this game.
And if they also, like, keep the weather toggle included, Mira has a lot of different weather effects that even vary per continent. So it could be neat to just play around with some cutscenes, throwing on all these interesting weather effects.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it would be really cool because I think every player's playthrough is different, right? Like, you might not get to see a cutscene in a certain environment, and so you can kind of experience something new, per se, by checking out the cutscenes with different weather effects.
And if they even include heart-to-hearts in that, X has basically all of its, like, character building is in the heart-to-hearts.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there, and I think that they're definitely make the most sense to be in there. But I will say, it is interesting because Definitive Edition had heart-to-hearts in the event theater, but if I remember correctly, 3 didn't have like the same similar kind of character moments in the theater. And like I would classify like a character moment as like a cutscene, but like a cutscene that you progress by like, you know, pressing the dialogue button and like watching it happen. The cutscenes are stuff that, you know, are fully animated with voice lines and you don't touch anything.
Yeah, honestly, I almost think they should start including those in the event theater. Because, like, if you look at, like, Xenoblade 2's or even 1's event theaters, there's just so much that's missing from, like, the dialogue box scenes and such.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, like, another quality of life feature that's coming to mind for me right now is thinking about how kind of quest tracking worked in Xenoblade Definitive Edition. And that's mainly because, like, I mean, there is so much to do in X, and you have to think about the size of that world. It's like, man, I want something streamlined so I know where I need to get something and how I need to get it. Because otherwise, you get kind of lost. And to be fair, you know, there's an exploration focus here. You want to get lost. You want to get, you know, immersed in the world. But I think having that ability to kind of track things and have an idea of where things are can help speed up some stuff that might get tedious from grindy quests.
For sure. And, like, even in the original version of Xenoblade, like, your quest indicators don't pop up till, like, someone's literally, like, 20 feet in front of you. Them fixing that was a godsend. And X has so much side content. Like, the original map was separated into, like, hexagonal divots. Like, they could even just be like, oh, here's, like, here's things you can find within this divot, or this quest you've already accepted. You need to go here to this part of the map. Like, they can be a little vague, but I feel like having just additional guidance would streamline everything a lot, and just help you keep mental track of everything better.
Absolutely, and I also think that maybe adding a feature like being able to teleport to the start of the quests or allowing things to be accepted, everything from Blade HQ, would also be really nice to see.
So, I wonder if they'll add like a thing to teleport back to like quest givers.
Yeah, that would be really neat because again, it's like the worst part of a quest for me, you know, I think about Xenoblade 2, right? The one where you go to Umon's shipyard and you have to go all the way back. It's like, oh man, and you know, now granted, you can just teleport on the map, sure, but I would really like to see them have like a, you know, oh, return to the quest giver.
And that's another thing that's almost standard in many RPG games these days. Like FF16, when you complete a quest, you can just hold triangle to go back to the quest giver, you know, run through the motions and get your rewards. So I think having that would be nice. And a thing with Xenoblade is that you don't always have a convenient landmark nearby to skip travel to. So, especially with X, that world is so broad and you sometimes have to go through extra hoops to get a skip travel location. So, I just want that just to make quests much easier to engage with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I will say, like, I'm thinking about quests and, gosh, man, it's like I sit here and I think about how a lot of the quests in Xenoblade X like have direct action on the world and different NPCs, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here like, this is a really crazy pull, but I would love for them to have like a flowchart of sorts. Not to tell you what you're doing, but at least to kind of help lay out like, hey, you made this decision, it resulted in this. If you said this, another thing would have happened. And this, again, crazy pull, but like, look at Type Moon visual novels. That would be a great way to start, because you could have your flowchart out with these quests. And I mean, it's so funny. I see people talking about it online recently. Like, people were saying, oh, don't say this in this quest. Make sure you say this. Make sure you say this. It's like, I think you should encourage people to say things that happen, but I think we should have some sort of like chart to kind of show what decisions affected what. You know what I mean?
I completely agree. And this would pair excellently if they added more save slots. So you can just like, oh, okay, I see this quest has multiple outcomes. Let me make another save and see if I want this outcome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, I know bringing in a visual novel, especially a Type Moon visual novel, is kind of crazy when we're talking about Xenoblade X, but it's just something that came to my mind because, you know, I've played Tsukihime Remake and Fate Stay Night Remastered this year for review, and Fate Stay Night in particular really had this comprehensive and detailed flowchart where, like, if you made a bad decision that led to a bad ending, you saw it in the flowchart, and when you got there, like, it let you jump back to that decision and make it again, which I think is interesting. I don't think that they'll go that far, because I think that alters kind of the message and the meaning of what they're trying to do with those decisions having an emphasis. But I do think that a flowchart would be really cool, so you could kind of utilize it in New Game Plus, which I guess that's a little early, but...
Yeah, it would be like just such a useful tool, because Xenoblade X, like the other Xenoblade games have a smidge of this, mostly just one, where you can just lock yourself out of quest lines, but X takes it even further where you just, like, the quests branch off one another. Like, this decision in this quest can lead to you getting a different quest down the line. And even, like, there's party members that you get from quests. So if you don't even know that your decisions are having this great of an effect, it's really hard to plan. And with a game this big, it's almost unreasonable to ask, like, oh yeah, this quest you did 80 hours in or something? Oh yeah, you made a decision and just did not get what you wanted out of it at all. Yeah, just restart. You can do better next time. No. Not gonna do that. Just please give us a flowchart and multiple save slots.
Yeah, no, and I think it just needs to happen, especially with the save slots, the event theater, and then obviously the quest stuff, expert mode as well. But those are also kind of wants from us that make sense, at least with this definitive edition release. Not stuff that needs to happen because of the Switch. But this one, redoing the map, kind of has to happen, right? Like, we don't have a gamepad anymore.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how they're gonna implement it. Because you also have the resource things, like you place these probes in new locations, and they mine resources. So they need to really figure out a way to make a very intuitive map to where you can easily skip travel and also utilize all these extra functions.
Yeah, no, and I think that there's got to be a way to make the information way easier to read. And that's not to say that it wasn't on Wii U, but it kind of was, right?
Yeah, because it worked more like a phone. Like, you gotta tap the thing, then a menu pops up, you see this, you have to click the buttons within this pop-up menu, and I guess they could implement that in portable mode, but it just would not be intuitive to work with in docked. And I'm also considering this. They should just have like a pull-down list, kinda like in the other Xenoblade games, so you can just quickly access different regions or different probes, so that you don't have to scroll all around this huge interconnected map.
Oh, very cool. So you're saying like maybe branch and take the map and section it off into different pieces, perhaps?
They could do that, like a lot of RPGs use like L and R to quickly swap between different menus. Maybe have that, or just like, oh, press this button to open up a list to quickly fly between different regions or points of interest.
Oh, that could be really cool, yeah. Because I could see them having like the main map be like, the standard massive map of Mira, but then you could kind of go into sub maps of each different continent, which would be really cool, I think. It's a good idea.
Yeah, FF7 Rebirth kind of does that because you can zoom out for like the whole map, but then you can just select individual regions and then you just have a much smaller chunk to deal with.
Yeah, I think that needs to be the template for what they're trying to do here, because Rebirth did a great job with that. You could look at everywhere in the region, you could see what was going on, but then you could zoom in and be like, all right, what's going on in the Junon region? What do I need to find there that I haven't done yet? You could go and really zoom into like even the most minute details.
Yeah, and if they really like borrow from the first Xenoblade's Definitive Edition, it'd be so nice to have all these visible quest markers. Maybe even give us like a legend so that we can turn on and off different icons, so that we can just have any information that we want at our fingertips.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like it's gotta happen, man, right? It has to happen. I think, the quest information with Xenoblade Definitive Edition would be great. And I also even think that the whole, quest line that you gotta follow throughout the world in 3 would also be good. I mean, it was a little obnoxious at times, but everyone had issues with Xenoblade 2 and navigating through certain areas, so I think it was for the best. And I don't know, I mean, I think doing that or utilizing some kind of like beacon system or, rings in the air that you could fly through to follow with your Skell would be pretty cool.
I mean, like, hey, Monolith helped on Breath of the Wild. Give us a pin system.
Right, yeah, that's right there.
So, obviously, we want the map completely overhauled just to make things as easy as possible. And Xenoblade X has a few rough edges that can be sanded down without, truly disrupting what the game's going for. And one of these things is, I think we need to have an easily accessible party swap mechanic.
Absolutely. Because, oh my gosh, that might be the most annoying party system in a game. Now, that's probably an over-exaggeration, but it is very frustrating.
Yeah, because you have to... Okay, I have this party member. Oh, where are they? Well, you have to go through this huge city and remember where they stay in it, and then walk up, talk, hey, I kind of need you in my squad. So that just has you running around the city, trying to gather up the party members that you want. They just need something easily accessible.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just crazy that they did that when it first came out. I mean, I understand, I guess, because, it gives people an incentive to go and get familiar with New Los Angeles and understand, how the city's laid out. But I also think, like, man, like, you're so far away and you're like, all right, let's go get X or whoever character in my party and let's go find them. And, when you get all these different party members, it's like, okay, let's go find or remember where this person is. It just gets really frustrating. So I hope they do change it.
Yeah, when I first played the game, I hardly ever changed my party, just because, I don't want to have to run around this big city. So my party stayed very static. What I'm thinking is just implement something like the PHS from original FF7. Like give the main character a phone or some kind of communicator where you can just call people up.
Yeah, no, that would be sick. And then like go into a menu, maybe even like a menu like the Heroes menu from Xenoblade 3. And you kind of can just select your party members from there. Like that would be really cool. I mean, it's just really frustrating that you can't change them unless you're at New LA.
And like at worst, it could just be something you unlock at some point in the story.
Yeah, no, I mean, it could be an unlockable, it could be a reward for completing the game. I mean, it could be something. I just feel like this is a feature that has to be addressed because this would change the game for so many people.
And since the game leans so heavily on the class system, it's just a pain to have to go gather the specific people you need to possibly even complete a quest how you want with ease with a strategy you need. So just avoiding having to running around would save a lot of time. And if they just made it like an unlock for like, let's say, oh, like the first 20 hours you still have to do the same old. But maybe there's a quest that gives you like this communicator where you can call people up. Or if they really want to lean into like, they're clearly going for this, oh, you're learning about the people, like your fellow survivors. So like maybe it could also be a reward for like going so far along in like their personal quest lines and heart to hearts. Like maybe after you get a certain level of affinity, you can just call them up. They're like, oh, here's my number or something.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that idea. I think it's just something that maybe, again, you have to complete a time requirement or a quest requirement to obtain, but it's just something that should be accessible at some point because, again, who wants to go to NLA and go run around and get your characters? Not me.
It's just the definition of tedious.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Since we kind of already touched on, like, classes a little bit, there's going to be some balance changes. Xenoblade Definitive Edition saw some balancing changes, and 3's class system, I'm not the biggest fan of. So, like, if they just really rebalance certain elements of this game to just make it a really tight and interesting experience, I think it would just make the game feel better.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's a couple classes that are pretty overpowered, and then a lot of them just kind of feel useless. And, I think it's fair to point out, this is a single player game. Balancing is definitely tied and heavy towards multiplayer stuff. So I understand that there might be hesitation or frustration from people there if they change some stuff. But for me at least, it's like, I would like to see some changes with the weapons and the classes a little bit. Just because, again, it's like, everyone ends up using the same things, like the longsword and all this, because they're the best things to use. And I would like to see them, make some buffs here and there to add some viability to some of these classes.
I think that just would add more to like the exploration and experimentation vibe that the game's trying to go for. Plus, if they're gonna retain like the multiplayer elements, I feel like just having, more viable classes in general would just make online play more interesting.
No, absolutely, man. I totally agree. I just think that giving people more options is a good thing. And the problem with what X has right now is that you have some classes that are pretty cool that you're just not viable to use because you're not going to be successful with them. So finding a way to make them successful and provide a core experience for players that really emphasizes that, choice available in the game, I think is a great move for Monolith if they can do it.
Certainly. And do you know what else is really needed for such a system focused game with all these mechanics? Better tutorials, or at least let me go back and look at the tutorials.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think any Xenoblade fan will tell you the tutorials in multiple games are just not great. 3 did a much better job than 2, but 2 really left a lot of people confused, especially around the orb system and everything. And it's crazy because, it has such a deep combat system and a lot of people had no idea. But I think 3 did a much better job, almost too much of a job at times. Like some of the tutorials were really overbearing, but I think that there's a middle ground to be found. I'm thinking specifically with like Overdrive, right? Because I feel like no matter how much people talk about Xenoblade X, I still see people to this day talk about like, oh, I don't know how to use Overdrive. It's like, it's not that hard, but again, like there needs to be A, better tutorials, and B, accessible tutorials that I could just go into the menu and look at.
What I'm thinking is they could probably make like almost like a training room or training grounds to actually have you go through the motions and actually have you get hands-on with what you need to learn.
No, that would be so sick. Like, can you imagine having like a training course or something, and then when you unlock like the flight module, you unlock a flight training course or something? That would be so cool, and just get to learn and experiment with the Skells and how everything works with combat with them. That'd be so cool.
Like, yeah, you can go out in the world, but if you don't have guidance and you're trying to figure out something you don't know, I feel like they should just have something like that. I mean, fighting games have training modes, MMOs have training modes, and I feel like Xenoblade X would really benefit from that. Because, like, nobody likes these constant, like, text tutorial pop-ups. They can be handy to refer to if you've forgotten something, but having an actual, like, chunk of game to play to learn these firsthand, I think would be a really great addition.
No, 100%. And I think really the last quality of life feature that is coming to my mind is kind of just equipment menu. And that's pretty bland, but I just feel like sometimes it was hard to manage. And I think it all just kind of boils down to the fact of a lot of what we've talked about here is that we're probably going to see an entire menu redesign.
Certainly, like, Xenoblade Definitive Edition, like, you can't even look at this new menu and think it was from the original.
Oh, no way.
Like, it just has so much more detail, and it's easy to use. Which X has so many systems and so much going on. I think having good tutorials and menus that are easy to, like, parse information and navigate are a must.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think that giving people the opportunity and the ability to understand and quickly change their equipment depending on what they're going up against is really important. And yeah, with this Switch version, I mean, your menus were one of the weakest parts of the original game. And so I think that you're gonna have to change it regardless. You might as well go all out, right?
Yeah. So, outside of quality of life, this definitive edition surely has to be adding more than just all these little fixes and stuff. There has to be more in the game, right? Some additional elements?
Oh, you know there will be. I mean, I think the one that a lot of people are interested in is with the soundtrack, right? So I think, you know, there's definitely the possibility we get some new music from Sawano, maybe remixes or new tracks even. But I think the one thing I keep seeing people say is, oh my gosh, let me turn off Don't Worry. I don't want to hear Don't Worry when I fly my Skell.
They're weak. They're weak cowards. But I could almost see this as an opportunity. Maybe they could add something like some kind of radio or something. Maybe fly around in the Skell with a radio, just pick a song.
Yeah, that would be so sick. I mean, if they could do that, like, let Sawano cook and make a bunch of different music for it, and like, I'm just gonna switch the radio to X4287-B, and I'm gonna listen to that, and it's gonna be great.
I had such a dark thought. What if they went full Bandai Namco and like, oh, you can, for purchase, get other Xenoblade soundtracks.
Never. They'll never do that. They'll never do that. No way. That would be crazy though. That would be so crazy. Like, man, could you imagine like playing New Battle from Future Redeemed or something like that in the Skell? That would be crazy. Just listening to Battle Thieves from other Xenoblade games. That'd be so cool. Like, cause I'm thinking about this, right? Like, Nier Replicant did this. Like, Nier Replicant did this when they had the bonus content for the remaster release in 2021, I think it was. Because they had costumes for 9S, costumes for 2B, and then they had music and voice lines to make it like Automata.
I think they could probably just lean more into like these little nods and fan servicey things like that. So Xenoblade X introduced the outfit system. What if we got like outfits of other Xenoblade characters?
That would be so cool. Who would you want? Like, who would your top 5 picks?
I feel like, honestly, just Shulk's has to be a given. Just have Shulk's fit in there. I mean, One of the character creator voice options is just flat out Shulk's voice. Just let me roleplay a bit. Maybe they could even add other, like, Xeno character voices. But as for, like, other Xeno character outfits I'd want, almost want to be spiteful and say, Rex. I enjoy his design, but I know many people don't. So, I just think it'd be funny, like, oh, here's Rex's outfit. Maybe see some people comment on Twitter or YouTube, get upset over it for some reason.
Yeah, no, I think Rex would be awesome.
We have to have Pyro and Mithra outfits. I mean, it just has to be done. Just throw Nia in there. Maybe Mio and Noah. Maybe go all out and just, here's every main character outfit. You can just earn them somehow.
Yeah, that would be sick, because, like, Xenoblade 3 did the throwback outfits, and they were mostly Xenoblade 1, right?
Yeah, I think so. Wasn't it like some amiibo stuff?
No, I don't know if it was amiibo, but I think it was part of the expansion pass. Like, you got...
Oh, I think the amiibos was for, like, the Aegis swords.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm really curious on, like, what Monolith would pick for this. I feel like today we would get, like, Shulk, and they would really lean into Xenoblade 3. And I wish that wasn't the case, because I think that there's some really great designs from 1 and 2, but I think 3's character design mostly fits with the world of X better. But again, like, that's not always the focus. Maybe they want to look crazy and, like, alright, like, here's your Zekinator outfit. Like, here you go.
Oh man, could you imagine, like, some of the item descriptions on some of these?
That would be so crazy. And then we're gonna get into all the theory stuff about, oh man, it's connected via this outfit. Klaus sent the outfit through the Zohar.
I mean, Lin-Li Ku already has the Monado hairpin. So
I know, but there's only one now. Why? I don't know. What happened?
She lost it.
Maybe half of Lin's hair, like, let's say that the story got changed, and maybe X is related to the experiment, Klaus's experiment, and I guess half of Lin's hair went into another universe. She just has one now.
Jokes aside, though, surely they'll be adding more story, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is confirmed. I will say, though, I really hope people temper expectations, because some of the stuff we've been seeing, and, obviously we read all your comments, we're extremely grateful for them, we love seeing the discussion, but I've definitely been seeing a lot of people in our comments talking about Monolith adding story throughout the entire game and, like, bits here and there. And while I think that would be cool, that would be a departure from what we've seen from them. And I honestly don't think we're going to see that. I think it's just going to be an epilogue with Lao at the end.
I'm leaning towards the same thing. Like, Xenoblade X does have cut content, but ultimately it was cut for a reason. And I think just trying to inject things into different parts of the experience would just almost make it like a Frankenstein's monster-esque, like, fillery game.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, that's the thing, right? I think that there's absolutely a chance that the beginning of the game with the white whale and everything has a chance to be retconned and tied into the trilogy. But I think beyond that, like, we will not see anything within the game. I think it's all going to focus on the Black Knight and Lao, because we know, Black Knight and everything else, like, there's cut content for Xenoblade X, and I think that's what it's going to focus on and setting up the future.
Yeah, like, the best I'll see, like, regarding cut content is they'd probably just use some cut content but repurpose it, like in Xenoblade Definitive Edition.
Right. So, because, like, for those unfamiliar, the Bionic shoulder was supposed to be part of the game on Wii. It got cut, but it returned as Future Connected. I said that right. Future Connected. And, that was the campaign with Melia and Shulk and two of Riki's kids, after about 1 year after the events of the main game.
Yeah, like, we've been referring to Xenoblade Definitive Edition a lot so far, but I think that's only natural, because I think that's how we would properly set our expectations. So, Future Connected is only about 10 hours. Like, you can do pretty much everything in that epilogue in 10 hours. So, X is a bigger game, so I think it could go over 10 hours. But I don't think it's going to be anything like this added content's basically a soft Xenoblade X2. No, I just think they'll wrap some stuff up.
Yeah, it's going to be stuff wrapped up, and I also think that it's pretty likely that whatever happens in the epilogue is going to tie into something in the future. It might not be the next mainline Xenoblade game, but I think that the stuff that we're going to watch here is probably going to get revisited at some point. So I think it's more about setting up what's next and tying up whatever loose ends they can in X that don't reveal potentially what's going to happen in the future. But yeah, I mean, I'm really curious, like, where it's going to take place. You know what I mean? Like, could we potentially see a whole new area or continent?
That would be crazy. And it would also be in line with what they did with the first game's Definitive Edition. Like, it might be a little too hard to make, like, oh, here's, one of these huge continents in Xenoblade X. I think that would be a bit of a tall order for just, a remaster, essentially. So maybe there's like, oh, here's like a smaller island. It's a pretty big chunk. Or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think people definitely have to temper expectations, I think, with this release. Because this game already has a lot of content, and Monolith loves to make content. We know this. Like, there's going to be a significant amount. But I think expecting something like a 20-hour edition, or like, a giant, biggest continent yet, is like probably a stretch. But I think there will be some new areas at the very least.
Yeah, like, even if it's like some smaller areas, like maybe something more akin to a couple dungeons, or even just, oh, here's like a hidden area in one of the continents that you have to go to for the new content.
No, absolutely. And I know, like, just sitting here thinking, like, beyond story stuff, I'm also really hoping that we get more Skell frames, because there's only like 7 in the game.
Yeah, and there is customizability with the parts. You can make some builds, decide on weapons and stuff like that, but I think we need more frames. I feel like there's just so much that you can do with having more different types of Skells.
100%. And like, there's definitely things that they could change with the Skells. Like, when you're in flight mode, I want to be able to jump. But, I know we talked about outfits earlier for characters. But how cool would it be if we got, like, themed Skells? Like, we could get, like, a metal face or a Mechon. We could get Siren. We could get even, like, an Ouroboros inspired one. Like, I feel like you could... The possibility is really endless. Like, I feel like you could do so many different things.
They could. Honestly, I wouldn't even complain if they just ripped the models straight from past Xenoblade games just to save time. I think it would just be cool to have the, like, new Skells that would be just good fan service. Maybe even like, oh, here's like Siren using Sacred Arrow and stuff like that.
Yeah, it could be really cool. I mean, do I think they'll do it? I don't know. That one's a little more iffy for me, but I think that it would be really, really neat if they could bring in those designs, because it would just, again, it's just really cool fan service for fans.
Like, I'd even take just skins.
Oh, for sure.
So, we're just talking about additions, and additions. Well, here's some more additions that I think we need. Might as well do some more classes, right?
Yeah, I could see them doing, like, maybe 1 or 2. I think that, I'm trying to think, like, take Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake, right? Very off topic here, but, that's an example of an RPG release that's coming up. It's like a remaster remake, but that game is bringing in a whole new class. It's just one. I think something like that would be great. I don't think we need a bunch of them, but I think doing just 1 or 2 new classes to give players who've already experienced Xenoblade X something to look forward to could be really cool.
And I think that would be just a great treat for fans, especially since this game has so much focus on the class system. Just make like a new class. It'd be cool to play around with.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you really could sit there for dozens of hours messing around with classes and equipment and everything. And I think that would just be so cool to have the option to sit there and be like, all right, let's dive in, try out this new class, see what's good, see what's bad. And even then, if they didn't change the balancing of the other classes, like this changes the balancing by throwing in an entire new class.
Mm-hmm. And you know what comes with a new class? New equipment.
Yeah, if we get a new class, I think that's a given. I mean, I think there's a lot of different areas they could go in with equipment, and even just building off of what we have now, just expanding it slightly and adding some tweaked options and stuff like that, and some variants would be really cool.
I wonder if they would introduce, like, if they did introduce a new class, I wonder if they would just give it, like, a new, like, melee weapon and gun type.
Yeah, I think that's honestly pretty likely. Wouldn't you say? I mean, I think seems about right.
I feel like if they would go through the effort of adding a new class set, they might as well just make it as fresh as possible.
Yeah, it certainly isn't going to be dull by any means or reused, I don't think. If they go through the effort of making an entirely new class with new abilities and everything, you're going to see some new equipment too, I think. It just has to happen. Why go half the mile when you can go the full mile, you know?
Exactly. Although, I will say, I don't think this will happen. I only expect if they add a new class at all, it'd just be like one or two brand new things like we said. But thinking back on how we were talking about having like outfits from other Xeno games or Skell frames, what if they were like, oh, just for fun, here's a class where it's literally just like you play with a Monado or an Aegis sword or something. I think that'd be very interesting.
That would be insane. That would be insane. Maybe they model something after Alpha's appearance at the end of Future Redeemed. That would be crazy.
Like, I'm not expecting it, and I'm not gonna get my hopes up, but I think it would be just so cool.
Nah, it really would be. I mean, the Monados are, like the coolest thing ever. So I think it would be really cool to see that make the jump. But again, how do you balance that? I don't know, because I'm going to be expected to just one-shot everyone. Maybe easy mode is you one-shot enemies and you get a Monado. I'd be cool.
We're getting a little off the rails with that. But I was also going to joke, what if it's like Malos's Monado? The one that's definitely not as good as Shulk's.
Yeah, man, it's something. I mean, I don't know, like, Monolith has so many different things they can do. It's kind of crazy. Like, I feel like we could sit here for 3 hours just kind of talking about, like, all the different potential weapons and Xeno-inspired content that they could bring into this game, because it really opens itself up to that.
It also makes me wonder, what kind of gun would Shulk or Rex use if there was a class based on them?
Gosh, I don't even know, man. That's a great question. Because you have to have a gun. So I don't know.
I'm almost... I'm jokingly imagining Shulk just with like a revolver, like a Monado cowboy or something. I don't know.
The Monado cowboy would be good, and then I feel like Rex would have to have like dual pistols for Pyra and Mithra, right?
Oh man, almost like a Dante thing.
Yeah.
With ebony and ivory. Here's my fire gun. Here's my light gun.
Yeah, that would be awesome, man.
So I think we'll cap off us thinking about additional elements with, are there going to be more character creator options?
Ooh.
Because surely with new story, they're going to have more voice acting. So they have like Shulk's voice in, like, let's get Rex's voice actor and Noah's, Mio's, Mithra and Pyra's.
This is a really interesting one for me, because I can easily see them adding more character creation options. I think even just from like things like, because for those unfamiliar, and again, this is another thing I saw in our comments, some people were questioning why the main character looked like that, and that was a really bad character design in the trailer, and that's because you get to create your own character. So I think it would be awesome if they added like more hair types and just everything else. I think there's so many different areas that they could expand that. Because to be fair, like X had a pretty good character designer, but I think it could be a lot better. Like just adding more elements for people to choose from.
Yeah, or you know, X loves tying things into its side content, so let me unlock way more. There's even a quest that lets you eventually edit your character. So, come on, that'd be some good incentives for side content.
See, and then if you add some new side quests, let's tie it in with those Xenoblade inspired outfits, and those can be tied with quests.
I mean, Xenoblade 2 and 3 did have crossover content.
We're just gonna get Elma in a Link outfit this time.
Oh gosh, think of the Bayonetta 2 route. Yeah, we're not adding Xeno outfits. We're owned by Nintendo. You're getting Link and Mario and Samus.
Yeah, it just cracks me up because in Breath of the Wild, whenever you can unlock Rex's armor, it's so funny. That's like such a cursed image for so many people because a lot of people are not fond of that design.
So, actually, I lied earlier. Beyond additional content, while also being additional content, I think there's going to be new modes. There has to be a New Game Plus.
Yeah, and you know, I kind of like broke the seal on this one earlier when we were talking about some of the quality of life additions, but I feel like New Game Plus is a no-brainer, and especially with those save slots, right? Like, being able to keep your game clear slot saved and not affected by that, and just starting a New Game Plus run on a different save slot would be really cool.
And like, if they did have the expert mode from the first game's definitive edition, like, let me like respec classes in New Game Plus. Like, let me take like the experience and just kind of put it in whatever class I want from the start in New Game Plus.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of room for them to really help retool New Game Plus to being a new experience beyond just replaying the game. And again, I think there's a lot of room for unlockables to be added and even exclusive to New Game Plus too.
I'll also say this, if there's a New Game Plus, let me get a Skell with a flight pack like right off the bat. Let me just go to the hangar and pull that bad boy out.
Yeah, that would be sick.
And like, oh man, you could probably break so much with that game, having a flyable Skell from the start. Like, oh, I'm just gonna go over here and do this stuff. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's one of those things that you can just really almost approach parts of the story like never before, which again is unlocking a new way of playing for.
And I think that's ultimately what a New Game Plus mode should strive for.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, because many people don't want to just sit down and replay the game that they just played, right? But now, with modern New Game Plus modes, you know, a lot of them add really good incentives to jump back in and experience a lot of new elements alongside the story, you know?
And once again, talking about FF7 Rebirth and also Remake, like, they don't have like a specific New Game Plus, but the chapter replay lets you replay chapters on hard mode after you beat the game, which lets you, well, forces the player to tackle battles from an entirely different state. Like, they have to form new strategies because everything's so much tougher. And there's rewards for playing through the game on hard mode. I'm not saying that Xenoblade X needs to force a hard mode or anything like that, but I think they could really do some interesting things with a New Game Plus rather than just having a very vanilla experience.
Definitely, man. I also think that beyond New Game Plus, like, challenge mode is pretty much a given, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, every Xenoblade game on Switch has it.
Bring back the Archsage.
Basically the Gilgamesh of Xenoblade. He's just everywhere.
And he's voiced by Adam Howden.
Yeah, let's just put him in Xenoblade X. Give us a challenge mode. Maybe that's even how we could unlock crossover outfits or just cool weapons or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for unlockables with challenge mode. I also just even think, again, I love that Xenoblade has like that speedrunning community aspect where there's a lot of people racing for world records and stuff, and I think the challenge mode incentivizes that, and it's kind of crazy to see how fast people can learn and almost take advantage of the combat system in the game.
Another thing I'm thinking, if we have a challenge mode, make some of the rewards some of those rare drops that you need to get Skell frames.
Yeah, right? That would be really cool.
Like having a guaranteed way to get the drops you want, rather than replaying like the same missions or doing the same things over and over. Like, let me work my way up through challenge mode and maybe give me a currency to exchange, or just make it an outright reward for certain challenges.
No, definitely, because like then that way, again, you're avoiding the grind, but like those challenges aren't easy. So it's kind of a matter of, if you're really good at the game, you can avoid the grind, but if not, like that's okay. You're just gonna have to spend a lot of time figuring out, how do I get this frame?
Exactly. The old-fashioned way of grinding for 20 hours to get the best skill in the game.
Right? Who can imagine? Who would do that?
So Xenoblade X is also very focused on like its like party mechanic. Like, it has the largest playable party of any Xenoblade, right?
Yeah.
So could we see more characters, or maybe even characters that we couldn't play as before can be played?
I mean, I think Takahashi's probably really mad at everyone, and so he's just gonna put Tatsu as a playable character. I think that's probably fair.
What would his weapons be?
Well, I think Tatsu is like, I mean, he's basically gonna become Klaus, right? He's the creator of the universe, probably. He's the smartest Snowpawn to ever exist, so I'm sure that he'd get like all 3 Trinity processor cores and just snap, and then Mira is back with Earth or something.
Make him the super boss, like how people are joking about Chadley for Remake Part 3.
Yes, absolutely. That is hilarious. The funniest part to me is that was like, the developers actually commented on that. Like, that's what I need. I need the Takahashi interview before the game drops with the Nintendo, like they've been doing for a lot of these games. I need it to be like, well, I saw fans talked very poorly about my precious Tatsu, so I had to make some changes to my story.
He just snaps after all the being cooked jokes.
Oh, it would be a punishment for sure. Nah, but to be serious, like, I do think that they could add new characters to the story. I personally think that it would be really cool. Especially if they do like what we were talking about earlier, and they change the party system to, allow you to change it from the menu. I think that'd be really cool. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there that, they could easily go in challenge mode and add in like guest characters or something. Like, we saw that in Xenoblade 2. Shulk was a blade, right? I mean, it would be cool to see something like that. Maybe, not even be functional, but just be like, all right, like, calling in Mio. Mio's joining the squad, and like Mio gets the Skell. Like, it'd be super cool if they did that. But again, this is all pipe dream stuff, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it might not happen, but it's also making me wonder if they did have like crossover characters linked to the challenge mode. Does that mean we'd see like Rex or Shulk or anyone else in like this slightly more realistic anime style?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I will say, I feel like X Definitive Edition looks pretty similar to Definitive Edition for Xenoblade Chronicles, art style wise. It's a little different, but it looks pretty similar. So I feel like that one would be in line. But yeah, Rex, honestly, I have no idea. I feel like you would get something kind of hybrid of Xenoblade 3 and then what Definitive Edition looks like.
Yeah, because at this point, all these games are using entirely different shaders for their models. Like, they all have a very different look between each game. So I wonder if they would try to just make these characters be part of the, like, this unified style almost. Like how Shulk and Fiora got completely different designs in 2.
No, 100%.
So, on the party, there's so many characters that you can put in your party, but your max party size is 3, right? 3 or 4?
Yeah.
And there's way more than 3 or 4 characters. And you know what a problem is here? There's no shared experience. If they're not in the party, they're not getting anything. And that just makes it a pain to, like, let's say you get a new character from this quest line. Oh man, they're 20 or 30 levels lower than everyone else, or their class isn't as strong as it could be. Gotta grind.
No, 100%. It's like, man, I really hope they fix this, because I get it. Like, does it make sense? No. But also, just even giving people like minimal XP to grow and level up, I think would be really nice, just because you're not having to like, okay, let's get everyone to max level, and you have to go and bring everyone and grind individually. Instead, you could kind of just be getting some backlog XP to help the party grow.
Or maybe even, like, if there's some like missions that could possibly let you farm experience or something with a party, a challenge mode thing, maybe even some item you could get from challenge mode. I just need something there to help bridge that gap when getting new party members.
No, absolutely. I think that's really important. And I think, once again, like a lot of the stuff we've talked about today, that's a pretty easy fix, I'd say, or addition.
Yeah, and I think it would just make the game a lot smoother.
Certainly. And I think really to tie it all up, and this is like not happening, like this is not a want or a prediction or anything, but I think just sitting here and being like, man, like how cool would it be if you could play the entirety of Xenoblade X in multiplayer? Like it would be so cool if you could invite people to your squad for missions and stuff and quests. It'd be so...
Oh, it'd be so great, and that would kind of make the class system even more interesting, because then you could confer with like real life friends or something to try to make like a party build and go do things and actually progress the story for everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I kind of think of it something similar to how Monster Hunter's done it, right? Where you could just kind of invite people on a mission per mission basis. But it'd be pretty cool, man. I mean, I know it's not happening, obviously. We're just kind of talking about it because it's fun to talk about. But I think X has that framework that it would really, really excel in a game like this.
And like the original version had a lot of like multiplayer element, like, well, light multiplayer elements put in where you could like see other people's characters wandering around or leaving messages. And there was like a few missions and stuff. But I'm also thinking there's actually another big RPG that kind of did something similar, where it's Dragon Quest IX. So you can, of course, just, you know, go to like the bar, the pub, and make your entire party, just like in Dragon Quest III. But you could also turn on local wireless play, since it was a DS game. And as long as like you and your friends are running around in close proximity, you could fight in battles together and just do anything in the world that you wanted. There's like a few limits, but I feel like a similar system could be very interesting for X.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I just think I'm really interested if Monolith one day kind of makes the jump to making an MMO. Because again, like, as we know, a lot of these games have these MMO elements, and especially X feels like it would be primed for something like that. So, I don't know, it's just really interesting to think about. The framework's kind of there. You know, I want the single player focus, don't get me wrong. But I think those online missions with friends are so fun, and at the very least, I hope we get a bunch more of them to kind of open up more, you know, replayability with friends online, so you're not just stuck replaying missions after you clear them all.
Nintendo's also been pushing their online services more. Like, we just got Nintendo Music. So I wonder if they would just be like, hey Monolith, can you like add more online functionality?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's definitely something interesting to watch. I mean, I know that they just had that big Nintendo Online playtest, and, you know, that's like a whole new game that's this weird... I don't even really know how to describe it. It's super weird. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that the online focus, especially with Switch 2 coming up, is a pretty big deal. But I would be really surprised if this launched near Switch 2. At this point, I think it's in fall.
Xenoblade X also had like Miiverse functionality. I wonder if that's just gonna be like gutted, or if maybe Nintendo's cooking up something similar.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's something to think about because, yeah, there's no Miiverse on Switch. It's just not there. And I don't see them announcing an update to add Miiverse to it just for X. I think it's likely that it's just going to get cut.
Yeah, more than likely. Dude, it'd be such a shame if they were just like, oh, only single player game now, and just like gutted any and all of the online functionality.
Well, we know there's online. They did confirm it in the store page. So
Oh, thank goodness.
You could play online with friends. We know that for sure. We just don't know how expanded, if it's expanded, if it's the same exact thing or something like that. But it is confirmed there's going to be online.
Ultimately, I just want to see more of this. Like, we haven't seen any of the UI. We've only seen like very small like exploration snippets. So we just don't really know anything beyond what we can dig up on things like the store page.
No, 100%. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get anything new for it, at least trailer-wise, until probably January at the earliest. I would say probably January, around the 3rd or 4th week is when we'll get a new trailer. But it's just one of those things, man. We'll have to ride it out. But luckily, there's at least some stuff to talk about still, like story predictions and stuff like that. But beyond that, it's like, you know, kind of a waiting game and just trying to help and work alongside the community to prepare for this release that's going to introduce so many people to this game.
It's a time to be alive, and it's an even better time to be a Xeno fan, because we know Monolith has to be cooking something up to release like a year after this, right?
Yeah, I was pretty certain it was going to be next year, but with this coming, I think 2026 is pretty guaranteed unless something crazy happens. So I'm really excited though. I mean, Takahashi, you know, he was hiring for a new RPG earlier this year. We know it's coming, and it's gonna be crazy seeing a game from Monolith on something better than Switch hardware. Thanks so much for watching our discussion on our wishlist and features we'd like to see within Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. If you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Conduit, be sure to leave a like and subscribe and let us know your thoughts and features you'd like to see below. Additionally, be sure to check out our other series like Under the Plate for more focused content on the biggest RPGs out there. For all things gaming, keep it right here at Final Weapon. We'll catch you next time.
Tonight's the time.